or fan, or you are a non-player, non-participant,
But in sports.
I think. So that was the distinction, was that aside from being a parent or a fan, the distinction was I'm a player or not.
Okay.
That's what you should say like that. I don't think participant helps though. But I like
Well,
that.
participant, you have to say participant because yoga or meditation, those kind of things that we are covering aren't really player. So you have to say
Well, can you do,
participants
like,
cover those.
player
roles and
slash-
But coaches are participants.
And maybe
Coaches are participants.
okay, so maybe the word participant
Trainers.
is not the right word, but the idea was that we wanted to distinguish you are a player or someone who participates in some activity
Right.
Right.
as a player. You know, I don't know how you term it for someone who does yoga
I
or
think it's
does
fitness.
CrossFit.
Fitness enthusiast.
You know, that
Enthusiast
then
might be
maybe
the
that's
Yeah,
the term.
that's a good word. Enthusiast is a good word. I like that.
And if we say
Go ahead,
enthusiast,
Joe.
it also includes the fan. So that might be
Yeah.
a good way to put it. Player
Right.
enthusiast or parent.
But John, I like where your head's at. I think you're saying it very logically and very clearly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so, you
Enthusiast
know,
is a good word.
maybe enthusiast, whatever. I mean, but the idea was that you're a player or you're not a player.
Right.
And
Right.
the player category needs to consider those sports or activities where you don't really call yourself a player. So
Right.
fitness enthusiast, wellness enthusiast, fan.
Well, good. Enthusiast would also cover fan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
So we can say player, enthusiast, parent, and we cover the other things. What we decided to narrow it down by is what the resources that the person coming onto UB Sports would use.
That makes sense.
So if you're a player or enthusiast or parent, you're looking for sports related and training related and enjoyment purposes to come into the site, right? And the other ones, you're coming there because you need the capabilities that we're going to be able to offer you through the AT platform or the recruitment platform or the facilities management platform, which is sort of like an AT platform, and also the fitness/trainer platform that we're building. And we decided to call that class studio trainer platform because fitness isn't always fitness. So we got away from the fitness trainer thing. So we've either broadened or narrowed the description so that we're getting the right set of capabilities that we're going to be able to offer to the right people by that answer. So that's how we ended up funneling this down.
Yeah, so then after we kind of realized that, you know, Industry Pro wasn't right, and we kind of came up with a better terminology, you know, it still might have to be flushed out or wordsmithed or something, but we kind of have the idea that it's player and non-player.
I like it.
Me too. I like it.
The real question was when they go into their profile to start to fill it out. My question, and Greg, this is where I wanted you to give some additional thought, is what value is there in them saying that they're in choosing an answer to the question, I'm a player or a non-player? Because the immediate next step after you say you choose your answer and say I'm a player or a non-player, you're going to pop up and say, okay, well, what role do you take on? And at that point, if they're a player, they're going to say athlete, fan, and really that's it. And if they're a non-player, they could you're going to give them choices to say, I'm a coach, I'm a athletic trainer, athletic director, recruiter, et cetera, all those other things. So to me, the question certainly divides the choices that they're going to make, but why not just skip asking them whether they're a player or a non-player and just say, here's the roles. And you have your non-player roles with your player roles, and you can choose. And based on what role they choose, you know what the answer to the previous question would have been if you offer it. And I think it eliminates some of the confusion when you do have an industry professional or a non-player. For example, a college basketball coach comes in and they fill out their coaching profile and the whole 9 yards. But now they want to put in their own activities, their personal activities. Like I play softball on the weekends, I play squash every Tuesday, I golf every Thursday. By asking them if they're an industry professional, someone like that, or asking if they're a non-player, they're going to constantly be checking yes, but you're never going to give them an athlete choice. So they have to kind of go back and say, okay, well, I'm not a non-player. I'm a player for this thing that I want to enter. So that was more significant when we were talking about using the terminology professional and non-professional. You know, are you an industry professional or not? Maybe it's less so, less critical if we're asking them something like, are you a player or non-player? So really the thought process is
I thought a couple.
What's that, Bill?
I said, I think maybe it'd be better instead of dropping that idea is utilizing a link to that. If you say you're an athlete or enthusiast in that whole group, you go automatically that's linked to all the athletics, all the sports activities and yoga and everything else that be going on that you can go through. And I like your role idea. You can get more specific. But also, if you say non-athletic or anything else, that links to all the non-activity roles as a coach or a trainer and everything else. And at the end of all the questionnaires, would it be possible to have any additional sports or activities you want to be involved? Are you involved in? And you click that, it goes back almost like back to the startup page, and you can say, I'm also an athlete for these. Would that be a way of doing that, or is that too convoluted?
like, here's the way I see it. The fact that they answer the question, you know, I'm a player or a non-player,
Right.
isn't really giving us anything of value from our side. In other words, I don't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, I don't see us ever doing marketing or a specific communication that's just to everyone who's a player or participant, or doing a communication that to everyone who's a professional.
Right.
Okay. I don't see that. The communication and marketing you're going to do is going to be geared more towards the sport and the role that they're in.
True.
Like, are they a coach? Are they an athletic director? Are they an athlete? What
Yeah,
have you.
totally.
So I
Yeah, but
don't.
there's a link for it?
So I don't see that asking that question provides any business value to us. All it's
John,
doing is funneling the person to the next question and restricting their choices. So if I say that I'm a player in baseball, I'm going to get choice athlete fan. If I say I'm a non-player, I'm going to get coach, recruiter, athletic director, et cetera. And to me, that's one extra step, one extra question, one or two extra clicks, an extra screen that the user has to go through to get to the point where they can choose their role. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying that
I'm in agreement.
that if, yeah, so that's the concept. And I don't have, well, I do have a preference on how it goes, and that's why I'm
Well, I would say
debating this.
that I'm a big fan of anything that is less questions and less clicks, because I really don't think people are going to do it. You got like 3 clicks out of people and then they're going to drop off. So I think with that in mind, pick the 3 most important things you want. And yeah, you're going to get every once in a while someone who's willing to go through 13, 15 steps, but like that's not the norm and you're going to lose people. So John, any suggestion you have of being more efficient with questions? I would say the least amount of questions, the better. Because to your point, from a marketing perspective, we aren't sending out communication that's going to be that targeted. Like we're going to have more general communication to start out with. So I think that if we're going to risk losing people because they're not willing to answer the questions, like that's silly to me. So I would say let's be as efficient as possible with answering these questions, and let's get people, fired up about the site, and then we can start to maybe prompt them to fill things out more thoroughly.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for us to do is to find out ways to, for the first page, when we say, okay, sign up, they say, yeah, well, I'm agreeing to sign up, that we get the information we need to reach back at them, and then to have the sports that they're interested in, or if they're not, we know that we can reach back to them on a non-player level and say, we have this app that really makes sense for you. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, people are savvy
to
about maneuvering around like websites. Like I wouldn't be too stressed out about, like, people are going to find the information and the content that they need, provided we have it up there.
Right.
So I wouldn't get to, I mean, I feel like we don't need to be too nuts about this. Like people are going to be able to navigate the site. It's more along the lines of, all right, if these are somebody who could potentially use the recruiting app or the add-on features, that's what we need to know. That's the only thing we need to know.
Right. Except for the player, who really all we need to know is what sports they're going to be interested in. And they've told us what their, sport or sports are. So we can reach back to them to get them back interested in getting back to the site.
Right. But I think that, like, all right, let's say I'm a lacrosse player and I want lacrosse training things. Like, I don't expect, like, I expect to get on a website like that and navigate to the lacrosse training videos. Like, I mean, is our site going to be smart enough to like populate that as the first thing they're going to see? Is like, if they check that they're a lacrosse player, like to immediately have training videos?
Yeah, exactly. That's what the concept
again,
of having
like
that
somebody
is,
going on ESPN, someone that's going on ESPN, or someone that's going on Facebook, or someone that's Googling training videos, like people are savvy enough to, like, yeah, it'd be great to have it be smart enough that when they come on our site, it's immediately populated. But like, that person is going to be able to get to what they need to get to.
would you come back to a regular site that is just about sports, or something that has already knows that you like lacrosse and says, hey, we have new training videos for lacrosse? What would you come back to?
Well, I mean, in thinking that thought process, we would have had to prompt
Asking that
person
question.
via email.
Yeah.
So
So my thing is, they've come to UB Sports, they see that they have it. We have a bunch of sports on. We do have lacrosse, and that's what's going to get them to sign up and say, yeah, I want more. So they sign up, or they've been led to it by their coach or somebody else who says they have to join.
well, so that person's the person, and again, like, this is just, I'm thinking from a marketing making money standpoint, so sorry, because that's always where my head goes. In that point, we just need to know, we need the coach, because the coach is the person that's prompting the kids
Right.
to go.
Yep.
We don't really, and I hate to say it this bluntly, we don't really care about the kids, because if the kids truly are that into it, they're going to go back and keep looking. But I think that the fact that that coach is going to bring in 15 people, the coach is who we want. So in that sense, we do need to know who's a coach, what sport they coach, like that kind of stuff. Like, I think we have to figure out where the money is coming from and design this to make sure that we're capturing those people.
Oh, don't forget players though, Kelly, like athletes, young kids love to imitate pro athletes. So they'd be more apt to buy like a special hockey stick or a special bat or a special glove that they know one of their favorite players has. So they would buy that through the store setup. We do linking for all different types of items to purchase.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to like
That's-
when Greg's got all these athletes, like obviously these athletes are going to be doing blogs and stuff like that. I mean, I think that's a really big hook, and hopefully our web store would, feature those items and it would all be, interconnected. But again, I think kids are savvy and they're going to be able to search this stuff out on their own. Like I think that we need to focus, and this is just my opinion, we need to focus on the people that are going to initially be a revenue stream for us and that are also going to encourage more people to join. So the coaches and the recruiters of the world, if they start saying to their people, like, you have to use this site, this is where all my stuff lives. Next thing you know, you've got every kid that they're recruiting's on our site. Every kid has to join. Like that's where we get followers. And hey, we start talking to, Greg's been talking to USA Cycling. Like if their members are all joining it, like we're trying to get volume. I think so. It's focusing on those people that are going to bring in more people, I think, is the ticket to our success.
Yeah, they're almost like influencers.
I want to circle back to the profile piece again here before we get too far.
I apologize, John. I was taking us down a rabbit hole.
That's okay. I think it's important to make sure we're all on the same page and that stuff too. But I go through the sign up process. I tell you what my favorite sports are, which may not have anything to do with the sports that I play or the sports that I coach or anything like that. But nevertheless, I go through the sign up process. I sign up, I tell you my favorite sports, and the basic stuff is done. I'm now a member of the site. Everything's verified, etc. So whether we push them into creating their sports profile or whether we allow them to do it on their own because they don't act on our call to action to fill it out, eventually this person's going to start to create their sports profile. So in the way I initially kind of designed that user journey, and what I thought we all had a consensus on, was that the first question that we ask is, what role were you going to play? And then after you defined your role, coach, athlete, whatever, we would then ask the sport, what level you play, et cetera, what teams, leagues, et cetera. Greg kind of turned that upside down in one of our more recent conversations, which is why we're kind of in this dilemma right now, in that he wants to get that sport first for the profile. And while we may be able to take hints from that member's favorite sports, the favorite sports that I've selected and keep in my profile may be completely different than the sports I build a profile for. But we can take cues and hints from those favorite sports and kind of offer that up first. Oh, we know that your favorite sport is X. Why don't you fill out a profile for sport X? So the idea was that Greg wanted to really capture that sport as part of the profile first. And while the sport doesn't particularly drive the process, it seems to be more important than the role they're playing, if you ask that. To me, I still believe that the role is the most important thing, because the role drives the type of questions you ask them to complete and answer. It drives the marketing more than the sport. Like, you can be pushing some kind of equipment, but you're going to push it based on their role more than the sport. Every sport has equipment: soccer shoes, baseball shoes, football shoes, tennis shoes, running shoes. So if you're doing shoe marketing because you have some new shoes in your store or something, or you decide that this is the time to do shoe marketing, you're going to gear that towards the sport. Will drive the products, but it's the role that drives your audience for that communication.
John, I'm in agreement with you that I think that and again, this is just maybe how my mind works. Sorry, Greg. I would say that the role from a marketing perspective will dictate communication. Because think about like calling all coaches. We are now offering X. Calling all recruiters. We are offering X. Calling all yoga instructors, all fitness enthusiasts. Like, I think that the role is so much, to me, is more important, because a lot of the marketing communication is going to go based on the role, and then the sport is secondary. It's very important to know the sport. I'm not saying that it's not. It's absolutely critical that we're not necessarily emailing lacrosse people hockey things and vice versa. But I do think that the role dictates a lot of the communication that I anticipate us sending out in the first 6 months to a year. So to me, I would prioritize role. Like John, my head and thought process is more along your lines, if that's helpful.
Well, I have a couple of issues with concerns as we think about it. Is first off, when I go to a website to look at something, I don't necessarily want to be asked what role I'm playing or what sport I particularly like. I don't mind having my favorites. So I click on my favorite type of sport I want, or even typing one I like. But I like the window. Click on the window and I see all the sports and I want to see it. I have a lot of friends who play different sports, and I'm involved. Maybe he's involved in golf. I know a friend of mine who loves tennis right now. My son-in-law likes tennis right now. I'm just curious to see what kind of availability is to ask him to go onto the website. So I go there, but I like to look at different things. So I don't necessarily feel picking a role or a sport, getting onto the website is the most important aspect of it. Getting to the website is the most important part, to know that those features are available to anybody who wants to join. If you click, if I click lacrosse, I want to play lacrosse. I love for lacrosse. Why can't I, when I click on log into my website, something pops up saying, "Hey, we got a new video of the lacrosse." As I said, it's my favorite. Right, softball, baseball, all the others. I'd get something on a little message there, and that would be like I want to kind of link the recruitment aspect when it comes, whether it's marketing or whatever, to their favorites. So their favorites necessarily.
I don't. I think I'm in agreement with that, Bill, and I don't think anybody has really, said otherwise. Once we start asking the sport and the role, the user has taken action and made a conscious decision to go fill out their sports profile. So we aren't forcing them into this at any point in time.
That's what I feel like it was. That's a good point. That's what I don't want, because if I'm forced to do it, I'm not going.
Yeah,
I want to go there. I like to choose. I want to go there, and that's definitely what I want to do.
When you sign up, the first thing you do is you give us your email and a password. We send you an email. You click the link in the email to verify your email address. And at that point, we ask some mandatory information: your name, your date of birth, your zip code, that kind of stuff. Okay.
Right.
And we also will ask your favorite sports, but the favorite sports are optional at that point. They're not mandatory like the rest of the stuff. And then there might be a call to action. We might strongly encourage that they fill out their sports profile. My guess is that the majority of people are not going to take that call to action to fill out the sports profile yet. They want to see what the website's all about first.
I agree.
Before they start giving up info.
Yes.
So whether or not they accept our call to action to complete their sports profile at that time or not, it's a conscious decision to do so. All we're doing is encouraging them, but we're not forcing them to do it before they can access the site. Okay.
Okay, that's important. That to me, it'll make people appreciate the website, and if they want to get more information or more in depth, they'll complete the profile.
Yes, and depending on how far along they've completed their profile, we've talked about having some indicator says 20% complete, 40% complete, whatever. There will be encouragement throughout the site. little ad banners that say, fill out your profile now, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
we may bombard them, with messages to do their profile, but we're not forcing them
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, Facebook does that too.
So,
You don't fill the profile on Facebook or something like that. They say you're only 40%. You want a little more details of or more, or what is it? More access to different features. Please finish your profile. If you don't want to, go. If you want to, you fill it out. I like that.
So one
so
of the
I
reasons
think,
why we wanted Kelly on this call was because it's really that first reach back that we get a chance at. When we get somebody on the site, they look at it, they like it, they decide to join, or they were prompted to by their coach with a link and said join. So they come to UB Sports and they look at the site, they tool around a little bit, and they see there's a bunch of sports on there. First thing to do is pull down what's your favorite sport as they're just going through it. Now, John, if we have cookies for the kids who allow us to use cookies, that's going to give us an opportunity to follow what their sports were, right? It's going to be now on their computer. But
well, I would not use cookies to track that. I mean, you can use cookies to make certain things better, but if I'm using the app and I start adding sports on my phone, and then I come home and I use my computer, those sports aren't going to be in the cookies. You're not going to rely on the cookies. If I'm using a private browsing, if I'm using a private browsing session, the cookies aren't even going to get saved.
Exactly.
The cookies are irrelevant. They don't do anything for us. All the information we need is going to be in the database.
Yeah.
So that's where you're going to get it from.
Right. So we need a way to lock that stuff into
Um,
the database as soon as possible, so we can then use that information to reach back to the people to bring them back to the site, because they're not going to be really sold on being on the site, assuming that they're not being forced to by their coach or trainer or something. If they're there to enjoy themselves, I'm expecting 90% of the people on the site to be just athletes, and probably around 10% to be coaches, trainers, and industry non-players.
I think we're gonna get way more coaches. And I would think it'd be closer to 50-50.
From your
I
mouth
was
to
saying
God's
60,
ears.
40,
But don't forget, if we have one coach and they get active on the site, they're going to invite all their players on, which is 20 to 1, 50 to 1, players versus coach.
Right, but so then think around, he's gonna turn around to his guy friends that are also coaches and tell them to join. Like, I understand the 50-to-1 ratio. Most teams have a couple coaches, so you gotta factor that in, but the hope would be that those guys, I mean, they should be our focus of who we're going after right away, because the athletes are gonna come, we already know that.
Absolutely.
But getting those guys will just only enhance our numbers. So I think that, look, it's a delicate balance, right? We want people to put in information, but we also don't want them to drop off. So what's that threshold without nagging them too much? Because I think John's point is John's flow of how he thinks people are going to behave is 100% on target. So I think that we just want to be careful that we're not pushing people too hard right off the bat to fill things out that they're going to lose, because we all know that when we get pushed too hard on certain sites, we drop off.
Yep, that's what I was trying to say.
I totally agree. The fact that we're going to have two different ways about thinking about this. If you're a person coming onto the site, one, I'm there because I have a job to do and I'm looking for information. I'm looking for the tools that UB Sports is now purported to have from my friends and our marketing. And on the other side, we're going to have people who are very into their sports. And the way I'm most worried about, before it's become a habit for you to go to UB Sports, what's going to trigger my head to go back to it? If I get an email, is it going to be come back to UB Sports, or is it going to be there's a new pair of lacrosse cleats you have to see? Or if we've added some new facilities onto our athletic trainer app. Those are,
well, after,
that second shot, third shot marketing is going to be really important for us.
But we already have their email addresses. So I think that we have
Then how do we make that more viscerally and operationally necessary for us to come back, for that person to come back to the site.
Well,
I think that you're
hold
gonna
on a
lose
second.
people.
Here, hold on a second. After someone signs up and they verify their email address, one of two things is going to happen. When they click the link to verify their email address, they're either going to say that we're looking for their date of birth and their name and their zip code, and they're going to bail out. And at that point, they still won't be able to use the member functions, because every time they go to log in, it's going to say, we need this info from you. So assuming that people get through that path, people that don't get through that path, that say, I'm not giving you my name or birth date, okay, you're going to be able to target them with a follow-up email that says, thanks for signing up, couple more steps for you to complete your membership. And that's how you encourage them to come back. That's all you can do with those particular people. For the people that do go through that and give us their name and date of birth and zip code and their favorite sports, the favorite sports, of course, are optional. So you're going to immediately, not immediately, but maybe several hours later or at the end of the day, you're going to send them that first email communication that says, thanks for becoming a member and joining the world of UB Sports and or the UB universe, whatever marketing terminology you want to throw at them. And you're going to know a variety of different things depending on how far the person got through the site. So for someone that gives us the mandatory personal info, but does not tell us a favorite sport, you're going to have a communication that's kind of general because you don't know anything about them other than they signed up.
Right.
Okay. So you can have kind of a generic, come back, see what it's about. Here's some of the trending groups, et cetera. Here's some of our, top celebrity athletes or whatever, something generic that may not apply to them, but something that might pull them back. For the people that tell you their favorite sports, that first message is going to be, thanks for joining UB Universe. Here's some baseball info because we know that's one of your favorite sports. And here's some tennis info because we know that's also one of your favorite sports. Then you're also going to have people that complete some of their sports profile. They tell us they're an athlete, they tell us they're a coach, whatever, okay? And in that email, thank you for joining the UB Universe. You've taken the first step to improving your sports life or whatever. And here's some stuff we got for you because you're a coach. And it's going to be coach specific, or it's going to be facility manager specific, or it's going to be athlete specific. So that's your first message after they kind of sign up. And you're going to have different types of data about people. So you would develop multiple templates of communication based on what you know when that email gets sent. So you don't want to send that first email to them until they presumably have had a time to go through and check out the site and had an opportunity to start to fill out their sports profile.
I agree.
So you're
Okay,
going to
so
have
the first email goes out as soon as they filled out their email address and what else?
Well, they give us their email address and password, and we send them an email that says, click this link to verify your email address. And you're not going to have any other language in that email. It has to be simple. Just
Really
click
just
here to verify.
Okay. So
they
email.
They click that link, they come to the site, and they may or may not give us the mandatory personal info, name, date of birth, zip code, et cetera. Okay. If they don't give us that info, they're kind of left in a inactive status. They're verified, but not active. They will get one kind of follow-up message. It's gonna be like, hey, you still have to kind of, thanks for signing up. You still have a step, another step to take before you can participate in the UB universe. The people that do give us that info are going to have a period of time where they may or may not fill out a sports profile. So depending on how much info those people give us, you may have, you know, a template for the people that did not create a sports profile, which would really kind of encourage them to come back and give us their sports profile. And for those people that did give us a sports profile, you might have up to 11 different email templates, depending on the role that they filled out. And then you get into the questions, well, if somebody filled out their sports profile and they say they're a, you know, coach in one sport and they're an athlete in another, you know, we have to kind of figure out, how do we blend, you know, how do you refine that first communication to blend different roles in sports and things like that. So you're going to have multiple options for that very first email to people who did or did not create their sports profile. That's going to be your first real communication back to the user. And that's the one that you want to get them to come back again.
Now, John, how would you link all
So
these different ones together, though, John? Like, if they don't fill out the all the other part, just the name and address, like name and email address, we send a confirmation. They, oh, we got it, worked out really well. But if they don't fill out the rest of the profile, or don't give the date, you say there's another. I like the idea of different emails going to them and requesting that they add more.
Essentially,
But how does the linkage go that way? This profile is linked.
Essentially, how it works is, you know, the database is going to store a date that they verified their email address and a date that they activated their account. And by active or activating their account, that means they gave us that initial mandatory personal info, date of birth, name, zip code. Okay. So based on those, we can say, you know, you can pull from the database all the people who have verified but are not active. Those are the people that didn't give us the personal info for whatever reason. Okay. So you can target them with one communication. Then you're going to you can pull from the database, give me all the people who are active and became active today. So maybe at night, once every 24 hours, there's a process that will extract people who activated their accounts today. That means they gave us their personal info. Once you pull that list of people, you can segregate them into a bunch of different buckets. Here are the people who activated their account today, but did not enter anything in their sports profile. And you would have one email template for those people. Then you say, here's a bunch of people who did activate today and created at least one entry in their sports profile. And you would have multiple email templates that would be sent to those people depending on what was in their sports profile.
And that's all generated just by the role as opposed to what sports they're interested in.
Well, it depends on what you want, right? And it also, you have to balance that with the complication. I mean, let's say that someone created a sports profile and in one sport they're a coach, and in 4 other sports they're an athlete, 2 other sports they're a fan, they're a facility manager, and they're also a parent. So I have all these roles in different sports. You know, we have to come up with an algorithm, a logic decision on what email template do you send someone like that. Now, you can't possibly create a multitude of templates to cover every single combination, because that would just be unwieldy. So we might prioritize certain roles. And if someone, regardless of what other roles they put in, if someone put in that they're a coach, you're going to focus on the coaching aspect and send them a template that's geared towards coaching. Okay. So in the simplest case, every member would put in just one role only. okay? And you would have 11 templates, a different template for each role. The complexity comes about when you start having a person who has multiple roles in their profile, because then you could potentially have 11 times 11 possible combinations, maybe even more than that. Maybe it's like 11 factorial or something, which is even more. But you can't really develop like 121 possible initial email templates for every possible conceivable combination of these roles. So there would have to be a, kind of a logical algorithm based on what our priorities were for that initial communication. Maybe if they're an athlete, you always send them an athlete type thing, even if it's a coach. But maybe you say if they have one coaching role, you want to send them the template that's geared towards coaching. So the construction of those kind of communications, I would leave to someone that's much more versed in marketing than I am, such as Kelly. How you create these combinations of templates and how you write them and how you decide which takes precedence, et cetera.
John,
That's the process.
I like that whole idea, John. I have a couple of suggestions or questions that kind of mixture of both. Couldn't those questions that you want to continue to get more information on the profile and to send an email to them saying we have more videos, whatever it might be linked to their favorites if they click on the favorites, or if you do click drop down looking at the sports, say you pick volleyball, you click volleyball, instantly a message goes to their email saying if you like to get more in-depth information, please answer these questions. That way it's all linked to the sport and the role all together.
Well, here's the deal. If a member, that's doable.
Was too complex?
Well, no, it's not necessarily complex, but think about the person that comes in and puts in 5 different athlete roles on different teams or sports, and then they put in that they're coach for 2 different sports, and that they're a facility manager for gyms. So when that person finally logs off the site and goes back to their email, they're going to have 16 emails from UB Sports.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Well, you could have one email saying you have lots of suggestions on your UB Sports homepage.
But it sounds like what John is saying, but what the way John is saying from how the developers would have to map it is, and John, tell me if I'm wrong here, but by certain ways of how we lay this out is going to prompt too many emails, and somebody that's going to get 16 emails from us because they clicked a bunch of boxes is going to think we're unprofessional and they're not going to come back.
Well, I think that what we have to consider is what the priorities of the people who are going to be coming to the site are, and what resources we can offer them. The player, participant, fan, and parent of player, they all have sport specific and training specific and basically those 2 reasons to be there. So they're going to be interested in that. Now, the other ones are going to be interested because it's more or less their livelihood. And whether or not they're making an actual income doing what they're doing, it's something they're doing because they're helping players or they're helping their organization perform its tasks better. And we're going to offer them different tools for that: the AT, the fitness trainer, the recruiter app, and facilities manager app. Or facilities manager tool. So those are going to be, they're there for a different reason, not because they love the sport that they're playing. But so we have 2 tracks going at the same time. So I don't think we really have to worry about 14 different things are going to reach back to them. We're either going to reach back to them because they love a particular sport or a couple of sports, and that gives us a great way to reach back to them by email. And the other one's going to be as an industry, as a person who's involved on an organizational role, we're offering this that you should come back and check out. I don't see.
Okay, so the person that comes in and says, I play recreational softball,
Yeah.
but I'm the coach of the high school football team. What communication are you going to send them? That first email that you send them, what are you going to choose to target them as, a coach or an athlete?
We can be more general than that. We can say, wow, we really think you're a perfect fit to be on UB Sports a lot. Come on back. And at that point, we would have offers or things that pop up with either showing them what the latest videos are in training or coaching or.
Yeah, but wait a minute, that email needs to have the content that will drive them back to the site. So if the email is more general, you're not going to get them to come back because they're going to be like, thanks for my sign up email. Who cares?
Well, the first email would have, you're right. The first email would have to say, there's so many great resources for lacrosse. Come back and check them out. Or are we just,
and you're saying that, and so, but are you choosing that content of the email because they said they were an athlete in lacrosse or because they were a coach in lacrosse? How are you gearing that communication?
Both athletes and coaches are going to be interested in the training info that we can offer them. And the coach.
Okay, so I'm a facility manager and an athlete.
Yeah, that's where you break out.
You're like missing the point.
Right. But if you're a facilities manager or an athletic director or some other non-sport specific role in sports, that's a whole different category of, we got to hit them with, we're going to make your life easier because we have these tools.
And does that take precedence over the fact that they play softball and tennis and squash on the weekends?
Why can't they be both?
I agree, Bill.
Go both.
Well, okay, because then the thought, the thinking has to generate, okay, well, if you have a combination of athletic director, athlete, and parent, then you have to customize it to include all those. Or if they're a fitness trainer and an athletic trainer, and they're an athlete and they're a facility manager, then you have to consider those. So you have to take the 11 roles and come up with every possible combination and create an email that targets. So that's an extreme example. Okay. But it highlights and illustrates the complexity that we will have in defining that first initial email communication. Is when you have, like, it's easy for us to say, okay, if someone's an athletic director, the email should focus on this. If someone's a facility manager, the email should focus on this. It's when you start looking at people that have multiple roles in multiple sports, that's where the complexity comes in, because now somebody, I don't care who, but somebody needs to make the decision that the email is going to take this profile element and that's the main thing in the email. We can combine other things, but they have to be weighted. Someone needs to make that decision. So I'm an athlete in baseball, I'm an athlete in lacrosse, I'm an athlete in squash, and I take yoga classes, but I'm also a coach for youth football. I'm a recruiter for college basketball. I'm the parent of 3 children. How do you craft that email to include all of those things? it can be done.
Well, you only have 2 emails you're talking about, John. Only 2 emails, one for a participant or an athlete, and one for a non-participant or a non-athlete, to get them back to there, saying we have, thank you for joining, for all your information. We have lots of information that to help in all your particular sports. They go back as an athlete, and all the
I
other
don't-
email thing, the director to say, hey, you got lots of stuff for you for your particular, for all your non-athletic, or we can come up with whatever wording on that.
Yeah,
Information.
I
So
don't believe sending 2 emails is effective. I think if I came to the site and started filling out my profile and I got 2 emails from you, that's better than getting 6 emails, but you're gonna
Well,
kind
you're
of
asking
lose
you're
focus.
asking to prioritize a person who may be into 15 different sports or 5 sports, but also does facilities and coaching and everything else. And you're saying, how do we get them to come in? We can't prioritize what they may feel is their most important aspect. They may
I
think
hate to
being an
simplify
athlete
this.
and learning information.
I hate to simplify this, but shouldn't we just be sending a, hey, thanks for joining the UB universe. We look forward to providing you, with like however we want to say, bespoke, customizable information to best help you. I mean, I feel like we got to figure out, maybe we can figure out one email that's going to cover all those grounds. Like
You're on the right track, Kelly. That sounds good.
I
That's
just
a good
don't think,
idea.
I think we're overcomplicating this. And
Yeah.
I think that John's
Well-
being so helpful in trying to say that basically from like a development standpoint, which obviously is like my weak stuff. I don't really know how all this works, and John is phenomenal at it. But I think that let's make sure that the number one thing is that we want to send out a very professional, buttoned up one email, because I think when people get 2 emails, we look unprofessional. That basically is encouraging people to come back. I don't think we need to overthink what's in it. I think we have to make sure that the person that's receiving it speaks to them. It's a call to action to come back. But I think the most important
Correct.
thing is
And
to
that
look
speaks-
professional.
Yeah, and that speaks to Greg's statement that he wants to leverage whatever information we know about this person in that first email. So that's why I took the conversation down the path. Okay, so if they're an athlete, the email can look like this and say this stuff about
Right.
training videos.
And I think the problem is we've
If
already
they're,
determined
if they're an
that
athletic director or facility manager, it could be focused on some different topics that would be relevant. But the complexity and the challenge comes in the people that have multiple roles.
And I think almost
And
everyone's
so-
gonna have multiple roles. So I think we know that, and we know that people are gonna be checking multiple boxes. Like we know that, let's own it, and let's make a plan based on that, because almost everyone's gonna be in 2 boxes.
Right. That's why I've been saying, like, we should have, our website should be which drives them to go to their spot. You can say, like you said, a general, thank you for joining us. Come back and for more customized, whatever we can come up with, customized information for your particular preferences. And they can come onto the website and then go to what they want. They click that, they'll have more information.
Yeah, again, people are pretty
I kinda
savvy.
agree
I
with you
think they're gonna be able to navigate the site. I feel like we just have to make
Yeah,
sure
if
the
the
content's
single-
up there, people are gonna find it.
If that single email is generic, regardless of what role they chose, there could be language in it that says, if you're an athletic director,
Yep.
check out these resources. If you are an athlete, check out these resources. If you're a parent,
100%,
check
John.
these
Let's
out.
do that.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
good.
can, so you could have 11 sentences or paragraphs, which would be lengthy, but you could have 11 sentences, one for each role, that says, here's why you want to come back if you chose this role. And you could display in the email only those sentences of the 11 that apply to roles that they selected. So if I said I was a coach and an athlete, I'm going to have 2 sentences that says, here's your coaching resources. Here's your athlete
So,
resources.
John, you're going down
And
the right
that
path.
link will bring them back to the site.
So like, are we able to do that? Like, let's cut to the chase. Like, are we able to have, like, is that something we can do?
Sure.
So that seems
Sure. I
like a
mean,
no-brainer.
the copy has to be written that way, but you could create the template that has variables for the email that says, if the person has an athletic director role, put in the sentence that says athletic director, click here.
I think
If
that's,
they have a facility manager role, then put the facility manager sentence in there.
I
So,
think that
so you,
sounds great. I
so
think that's the right thing to do.
yes, so you won't have a specific call to action in the email, Greg. So I won't be able to say, oh, check out the latest lacrosse shoes, or check out the latest coaching intelligence on how to be a better coach. You're not necessarily going to have very specific calls to action, but you'll say, if you're this type of role, here's resources for you, click here. And they come back to the site and they'll see them, because the site is built to generate those things based on the roles.
My challenge isn't with that first. My challenge is that we need to capture those answers in that first question. Whether it doesn't really have to me, it doesn't have to be 11. We're going to be able to narrow this down to maybe 5 ways to put that, 6 different categories of participants. It's either going to be, I'm a player / enthusiast / fan / parent. We know that they're going to be interested in sports specific information, right? So that's, or activity sports information. The other ones we probably can get down to sports specific roles like coach or recruiter. We'll be able to narrow that down pretty quickly. And facilities manager, athletic director, league director, they're going to be more administrative. And then we have the athletic trainer and the class trainer as those 2 other ones. So right now that's down to what, 5 or 6. So, and we can ask them the same thing. We're going to make your life operationally better, or we're going to give you information about your sport, coach / recruiter / trainer, or we have tools that are going to make your life a hell of a lot easier than it is right now. And that would be the apps that we're building that we're going to be selling subscriptions for. Right.
So we can break it down that way, but that's that when it comes time to figuring out what is going to be in that first email we send these people, that's exactly the kind of logic that has to be thought through as to how that gets developed. That will affect the copywriting for that email, what parts of the copy are dynamic based on the role, et cetera. So you might end up with 3 templates and not 11 or not 121. Okay. So you can do that, and it can be specific as the combination of the roles. Okay. So a fitness trainer, athletic trainer, or et cetera, whatever the combinations were that you spoke of, Greg, we can come up with something that fits that combination. And you'd have that many templates, the 5 or 6 templates. Okay.
My question still circles back to the initial point that we find out this information. How is it requested from the person? Are we asking this when we first ask them their name, date of birth, zip code?
I kind of went through that. No, you're not asking it at that point. This is where once they verify their email address, they get the email from us, says verify your email address, click here. They click that, they come back to the site, they log in. We're going to ask that mandatory info up front. Okay. Name, date of birth, zip code. At that point, some people are going to just stop. And the email that those people get is going to be very different. And we might know what they told us were their favorite sports, and they might not have told us any favorite sports. And that's all you're going to know about them. So they're going to get something completely different. It's going to be a little more generic Maybe it's
So we are
focused on
asking
their
them,
favorite
John,
sport.
at that point, we are asking them what their favorite sports are when they're filling out the date of birth, zip code, that kind of stuff.
Correct. You're asking favorite sports, but it's not mandatory.
Right.
You can't force them to choose a favorite sport.
That's cool.
So when you send this email, which is different than the ones we were just talking about, these people will get an email that if they did not pick a favorite sport, it's going to be kind of generic. And just say, come back, tell us what your favorite sports are, create your sports profile, come find out what the hubbub is all about. Okay. If they did tell us favorite sports, they might get a second variation of that email, which says, oh, check out all the cool baseball content we have. And because baseball is their favorite sport, you don't know if they're a coach or a player. So you can't, or a recruiter. So you can't really focus on role type language. You would just have to say, come check out our baseball. We have training videos, we have coaching videos, we have, managing baseball field information, whatever. So, but so it'll have to be generic based on their favorite sport. Then you're going to have people who do start to fill out their sports profile, where they're going to give you a role in a sport.
Now, is that going to be in that email, that second page they see? First page being just what your email is. Second one, you verified your email and DOB, zip, and favorite sports. And then under that, you're going to have the different roles. Like you just same thing, same place. You're going to start going down that.
No, because after they give us their date of birth and that stuff, they're going to submit that data. And that would have their favorite sports if they picked favorite sports. So we're going to save that stuff. And then there's going to be a call to action that says, thank you. You're now an active member. You can use the site, all portions of the site. Well, except for like the paid stuff, like Recruiter and whatever. But at that point, there's going to be a call to action that says, start filling out your sports profile.
Now we've taken
And
all
they're
this
gonna
information in as soon as they've hit submit, right? They have a button there that says, we're on the UBsports site now, right? And there's a button that they say, submit this info, right? And then from then on, it's going to be update your info as you go through this.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm great with that.
They say for
But I
more
mean,
enjoyable experiences, something like that, to make them feel better too. That's
I
mandatory.
agree with that, Bill.
Right.
Once they give us their personal info, name, date of birth, and maybe their favorite sports, they submit that. Even when they do that, they're still going to be like, the page they're on is still going to look like UBsports because they'll have logged in. It's just, we're not going to let them see anything but the public anonymous content unless they fill that mandatory info out. So they submit that, that's going to go to the database. And then they're going to get another page that you could put whatever language you want to encourage them to fill out their sports profile. But the key is that you're going to want to push them to start building their profile. I believe a majority of people will not start to build their profile because they're going to want to check out the site.
Yep. I agree, John.
Before they give
I agree.
you
It's going to be like
Yeah, that's cool.
most people, and I forget the exact number, but it's like most people don't fill stuff out like that until they've been to the site like on average 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, and it gets up to 6 touchbacks before they actually really consider themselves members of the site.
Which is totally fine. I think we can anticipate that. And I think we just use
Agreed.
creative language like, unlock, or, we make them feel like they're going to be getting exclusive content. We start using kind of words like, by signing up, you unlock special, whatever we decide to do. But I think that should prompt a lot of them to do it.
Right, exclusive videos or something special.
Yeah, something like, prompt them to do something. I mean, again, we can use pretty generic language to entice them to do it.
Well, I think that gives us a great, Kelly, you're absolutely right. It gives us a great opportunity to reach back to these people over and over with the new content. With the ambassador just wrote a blog. He's at the
Yeah, and again,
Olympics and he's reporting in.
And again,
We just got great
I
content.
think
Check
we
it
need to
out.
do it, we need to do it in a way that doesn't, sorry, he's so loud. We
I
need to
agree
do
with
it
him,
in a
though.
way that doesn't make them feel bullied or pressured into it, because we know people don't respond to that. So I just think it's, you know, let's let people get familiar, and then we'll hit them with unlock, you know, exclusive
Yeah.
content by, you know, finishing up your profile. Then it's not too
Right.
too pushy.
When they come back, they'll be prompted. They don't have to get prompted on the email. They get the, you know, the first paragraph of the blog or something, and then they come back, or, you know, what content it is, and show a picture of a thumbnail of the video that it's going to be, and they can click on that and what's it called, a micro page link, so that it takes you right back to that video, and boom, you're there, and it says, it might show the first minute of that video, and then it says, you know, that for the rest of it you have to join, or something like that, or not. I mean, you could just be like, here, enjoy it, and then at the end of this, you'll get more of this if you sign up and tell us more.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so let's go back, because I think that kind of resolves the issue. I mean, if we make the assumption that the vast majority of people will not begin to create a sports profile right away, then you can simply just say you have, as soon as they fill out that mandatory info with favorite sports, you just basically have an email crafted with language to get them back. And that can be done almost immediately when they submit their personal info and their favorite sports, if they choose favorite sports. That way it's not done like at the end of the day or what have you. Okay, so it's kind of like an immediate thing. So, and that eliminates the complexity of how many different variations of that email that you have, because now you're not building that email based on the roles that they may have told us that they actively are. So I want to step back a minute. When a member chooses to start to create their sports profile, and that's either right after they give us their mandatory personal info, or maybe it's after 10 or 12 visits that they say, okay, I like the site enough, I'm going to tell you about my sports profile, and I'm going to build my sports profile. When they choose to initiate that process, whenever it is, I had initially said that we need to ask them what their role is first, because that really drives all of the questions that follow.
I agree.
Greg turned it upside down and said we should ask the sport first.
You just,
And
basically, John, you just said that.
while I think we can ask the sport first without a large impact to the user's experience in going through this profile creation, we could simply ask them both questions simultaneously. What sport and what role?
Yeah, I go
I think
with
that works, because then doesn't that allow you to check multiple things, and it kind of covers everything right off the bat?
So what you'd have then, John, is a drop down that would have sport. You radio button the sport, and right next to that, it says in a player role or a player participant role or a non-player role, and then radio buttons there too.
Just, you have one drop, whether it's a drop down or radio buttons or what have you. There's newer technology. It's not even going to really look like a drop down, I don't think. But you're going to have a drop down where you pick a sport. Right next to it or underneath it, you're going to have a drop down that allows you to pick the role. I don't think you need to separate the fact that it's a player or a non-player role. Why have two drop downs and make them have to look at both? If I'm an athlete, and if you have all 11 roles in the same drop down, I click that second drop down, I see the 11 roles, and I pick the one I want.
Or the bunch of them that you want. You're going to be a player, a coach,
Potentially.
and a
Potentially, but I don't, I think you have to do it like,
piece by piece.
if I'm going to be allowed to pick, if I'm going to be allowed to pick multiple sports, I can't go into that drop down and say, here's my 4 sports, and then go over to another drop down and say, here's my 4 roles, because you don't have a way to identify which role to which sport. So you're going to have 2 drop downs, one for sport, one for role, and you pick one of each. And if I want to add a second sport, I click like a plus sign, and it gives me 2 more drop downs underneath it, one for sport, one for role. And if I have a third role, I'm going to click the plus sign underneath it and get 2 more drop downs, one for sport, one for role. And I'm going to continue adding to that page until I'm done.
Yeah,
In other words, there
kind of
has to
picture
be,
how that looks.
it looks like
It's going to
any
be
other
like
web page
like
where you,
that rolling thing that you see when you're looking at a list of things on a phone, where the highlighted one is the one that you can choose, but the other less highlighted ones or whatever, lowercase whatever, are on top of that and below that, or is it just you're scrolling?
think of it as a normal drop down.
Right. Okay.
Well, you have 2 drop downs on the page, and next to the right hand side of the 2 drop downs, you have an add button. So I pick a sport, baseball. I pick a role, athlete, and I say add. And then underneath those 2 drop downs and the add button, I will see the words baseball, athlete. And there'll be a little trash can icon so I can delete it in case I made a mistake or don't want it on. And then I go back to the same drop down and I say football, coach, add, and I click add. And underneath, it'll add a second line that says football, coach. And if I want to delete it, I can delete it. So if I have a combination of 10 roles in sports, by the time I go to submit that page, underneath the 2 drop downs in the add button, I'm going to have a list of 10 things, which is sport 1/role 1, sport 2/role 2, sport 3/role 3.
And then you have the sport that you both play and you're working in. Both those roles pop up underneath that sport, or you have sport first role, sport second role, sport third role.
It would say baseball/athlete, and then the next line would be baseball/coach.
Yeah.
Because they're different elements.
And then the plus there would be
can,
telling us what level and what team and what league or whatever would go underneath that to get more specific.
You're
at
gonna
that
lose
point, at that point they would submit the page. You allow them to pick the sports and roles that they want.
Right.
Yeah, you got to be
The
careful.
combination of them.
You got to be careful because I think John's point is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you want to lock that in.
Yeah, exactly.
When you start getting too into Greg, like not everyone wants to share that information. So if we can lock in that they're a baseball coach and they play flag football on the weekends, like lock it in and move on.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah, we got to treat it like when you're feeding a squirrel.
Yes,
Kinda
Bill, feed that
Bring
squirrel.
it into you.
So the member will tell us all of the combinations of the sport and the role, and they'll submit that page or go next or continue, whatever word you want to use. But ultimately, they're done with that page and those questions. That gets saved to the database. So to Kelly's point, you're going to know that they're a baseball coach and a football player or whatever, okay? You're going to know those things. The next page they get is going to say, okay, well, at what level are you a baseball player? Are you professional, semi-pro, college, junior college, youth, whatever the level is that applies to that type of thing. So they'll be able
Excuse
to
me,
then
guys,
pick.
I have to get running, so I gotta go get my shot. All
Good luck, man.
right, so thank you. And,
Very helpful.
if I can get on my phone, I'll try to jump on. I'll try to jump on my phone on the way up there. We'll see if I can get on it quick enough.
Great, thanks, Bill.
Okay.
All right, take care, guys.
You too. Thanks a lot.
So the next page, Greg, would then be where they can pick the level that they participate at,
Yeah, that's fine.
you know,
That's
for
great.
that sport
Yeah.
role. And I think at that point, you only ask level and allow them to go next. And then you would ask them what team or what league and go
Yeah.
next.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. So each time they answer these questions,
You're locking it in.
they'll be saved. Okay. The level is a demographic, has demographic value to us. The team or school or organization, as well as the league or the division they're in, they may have demographic value to us. A lot of the other questions, depending on the role that they fulfill, like what's your favorite moment in the sport? How have you handled certain types of in-game injuries? Any of these kind of other questions that don't really have demographic value can then all be lumped on one screen.
I agree.
Well, within the constraints of the size of the screen. But that demographic data, the data that's going to be critical to us segregating and communicating to the various people, should be one question and done. And when they go next or continue or submit or whatever but you want to call the button, that shit gets saved in the database. It's locked in.
Agree. Totally.
I agree as well.
So
Do you need
So
a next
what I'm
button, or
hearing-
can you have the, okay, so the next question pops up below. As soon as you click on that next box that you're going to fill in, can't that lock in that information that you just put in before?
well, on the
You have to say next.
page with on the page where you're picking sports and roles together,
Right.
there's a trade-off. Yes, you can send those things to the database right away. So when I pick a sport and a role and I click add, not only does it update the display to show that I've added those, but it could also send it off to the database. And the next sport and role I pick, when I click add, it can send it off to the database. And then, oops, I made a mistake. So one of the ones I added, I can hit the delete button to remove it. That's a lot of traffic to the database, Greg, a lot of bandwidth over time.
Okay, I see.
So maybe with the sport and the role, it might have enough value that you can support the cost of the performance hit, because it's not just the cost that it's fractions of a cent to send that data across the wire, but every time you connect to the database to save or update information, there's a performance hit. The system gets slower.
Uh-huh.
The person on the other end is going to be waiting milliseconds longer. And when you have 1 million users at the same time doing this, it might not be microseconds. It might be seconds. So there's a monetary cost. There's a performance cost, which means you need beefier servers and more bandwidth. So that there's a monetary cost to that. There's a user experience cost in the performance of the site, making sure that it's responsive enough. So there are trade-offs and decisions on what stuff you want to send immediately to the database. In the case of choosing the sports and the roles and continually adding a bunch of them, there's a lot of value in hitting next or continue or submit once, and you send all that data across the wire.
Right, so you're batching it instead of sending it individually.
Hey, guys,
Correct.
sorry to interrupt. I have to run. Greg, do you have like 10 minutes for me, like in a half an hour?
I have a 1:15 call, but after that, let's say 1:45 or 2.
1:45 or 2 would be, 2 o'clock, I have a 2 o'clock. So even if you end up, yeah, 1:45 would be awesome.
Yeah, as soon as I get done with that call, I can't guarantee it, but I'll try to get off by 1:45.
Okay, I really need to connect with you today.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, bye, guys.
Okay, thanks, Kelly.
See you, Kelly. Good hearing from you. So anyway, Greg, there's trade-offs on what you're trying to do if you want to save each particular selection immediately.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I totally understand.
So we would have to just be cautious as to what data you want to send to the back end immediately versus kind of in a batch. Okay. For example, when someone fills out the information that says, what's your favorite moment in the sport? You know, if something happens and that stuff doesn't get saved to the database because they forgot to click the button or whatever, there's not a lot of value lost to us because
Right.
it's free form text. We can't extract that data and target them with communications or other things.
Right, that's more.
So that could be your first triage point. Maybe the combination of the sport and the role you save right away. But when you get to the point where you're putting in level and team and division, that's less critical. You just kind of batch that stuff.
Now, can that
So
be
you can
saved
make
in
those
cookies until they answer it? Until it gets sent
You
in?
don't use cookies. Some people don't even allow cookies
Right, of
on
course.
their computer. So
course.
you don't build sites to use cookies really anymore. I mean,
Right.
It's the server, their session on the server will remember that stuff.
Okay.
The browser has some memory and storage as well, which in one way, you know, it behaves the same way a cookie would or did, but it's not volatile. Cookies are volatile.
Right, they are, right. And people
Right.
decide not to have them.
Yeah, and today's, you know, modern browsers, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Safari, etc., all have other storage mechanisms such that when you're running a website in your browser, there's other ways to store that data within the browser memory.
Right.
But you also have to be frugal in what you're storing there because you are consuming memory on that person's device, whether it's a phone or computer. So you can't, you know, store massive amounts of data.
Is the technology now where if a person clicks off to another one of his tabs or goes to another Google search or opens up another window, the browser can say, well, of course you can. You can say, do you really want to leave this page? But at the time that it does that, can we set it up so that we capture everything that the person had done up to that point where they click off that page and go to some other
Well, I would say that you have to be careful because if I enter data on your form and choose not to submit it, but you capture it anyway,
there may be a reason.
you could be violating the person's privacy, so to speak, or
Yeah.
some other kind, you know, it's kind of surreptitious. You're doing it, you're saving it without them knowing and them consciously not saving it. Okay. What you can do, and you'll see this on certain websites will implement this, is if I change one of the form fields, whether it's a drop down or free form text, I can say, not in these words, but hey, this page is dirty. So the browser can tell, JavaScript can tell that the form has changed, that I've made selections or I've entered data in the form, and it can then display a message to the user that says, hey, you made changes on this form. Do you
want to
really
save.
want to navigate away?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can do that. And that's the preferred way, because then the person has the option to say, oh, yes, I did mean to save it, or you're damn right, I didn't want to save it. Let's get out of here.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're good. I think actually this is really, we've really gotten down to the point where we know we need to ask when. And I
Okay,
think the
I'm
only
gonna,
challenge is going to be how that looks to the user. And I think we have people who are doing UI, UX to figure that out, don't we?
yeah, I mean, that's what you're paying the developers to do.
Yeah. All right, cool. I think we're good there. And then we can always,
I mean,
there's
if you
no
want,
reason why we can't have those other pages where we say how fast you are, how strong you are, how agile, blah, blah, blah. In the whole different, now I'm on my personal page and I'm developing my personal profile. That's a totally different set of questions from what we're really getting to right now, was how functionally you're going to use the site and the apps. So you're right. All those other
yeah,
things
I
can come
mean,
later, but what we really need to know is how we're going to
there's
make sure they're, using this.
there's multiple elements to someone's profile. There's your basic profile, which is your name, zip code, date of birth. It says
Right.
your favorite sports. Then there's your sports profile, which is what sports do I play and what roles do I take on in those sports,
Right.
right? And then there's a recruiting profile. Like I might be involved in 5 sports in college as an athlete, but I'm really only recruitable in one sport.
Yeah. I think
So
instead of calling it,
you would
yeah, I'm thinking
you
more
can
like,
call it whatever you want, but to me it's different than that sport profile. It's more statistical, whatever you want to call it: recruiting profile, statistical profile, benchmark profile, metrics whatever. You can figure out a word for it somewhere along the line. I don't care
Right.
what you call it, but to me there's those 3 elements to your profile.
right. I agree. Yeah. That's
And
great.
only a certain number of people are going to have recruiting profiles.
Right. Or a
Whatever
personal
you want.
profile where you're filling in how fast you are, or how strong you are, that kind of stuff.
Well, that's what I mean by the recruiting profile.
Yeah, exactly. So that's brag page or something like that, so that it's not specific to recruiting. But as soon as you click that recruiting profile, that's when I think you'll automatically be asked about your stats, but before that, you can ask to fill in your stats for your particular sport.
Well, hang on, because if we're allowing people to go through and choose multiple sports and roles
Right.
all at one time,
Yeah.
and I'm going through the first sport that I'm an athlete in, and I have 3 more, right, to follow.
Right.
So I'm going through and I'm saying, what level do I play at? What teams, what leagues, what groups, all that kind of stuff. And then if I say, yes, I'm recruitable, and you all of a sudden dive into all of those statistical things, I still have 3 other sports that I have to fill out the basic info for.
Right. So you want something saying,
So
you got to come back and say, hey,
I would,
yeah, we're on the same page.
yeah, I would capture the fact that they're recruitable in this sport, but allow them to finish this role and do the rest of the roles and handle the recruiting at the end. You don't want them to see all of the statistical questions that you're going to ask, and they're going to be like, holy shit, there's like 200 questions here, and then they bail out and you never got the data on the other roles.
Right.
So I think we just need to be cautious about, extracting a user from an existing process to get that extra info because they said they were recruitable.
Agreed, totally.
Because, so, you can do it. It's not a problem doing it. Some people won't mind it. But if I all of a sudden popped into 200 questions of statistical measurements, well, first off, they're not even at my fingertip, right?
Right.
I would have to start putting information together, or maybe calling my coach to get the data, because I might not even know it.
Yeah, you would.
So
frankly,
to drive that, to drive them into it when they're potentially not prepared to answer those questions will distract them from filling out the rest of their sports profile.
I also, on that point, I just read something that said most recruiting coaches or recruiters are going to look for a referral from your current coach. So that, to your point, it's really important that you engage the current coach in that process. So we have to have that information as well, and that's where the high school kid is going to get a lot of the information from their coach anyway. Does that make sense? All right, we definitely have enough to get
Yeah, I
started
mean,
with the developers, right?
Well, I need to rework those diagrams.
Okay, super. Well, that's gonna
Um,
that's gonna be enough for us. I think we're good on this whole discussion to get the developers.
Yeah, I mean, and then the only other thing is to kind of flush out, the actual verbiage
Right.
for the questions.
Okay, that I'll once we know what the pages are going to be, we'll be able to go in there and do that. Hey, Bill. So yeah, okay, so that solves really the whole issue we're going to have with the development of the personal profile between now and the launch, right? And all we have to do is then clarify those larger pieces. It's going to be player / enthusiast / fan / parent. Is going
Yeah,
to
I mean, are you expecting them to put this sports profile stuff in before the release?
You mean this stuff we're talking about right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for a month now, so they know it's coming, and they know they're saving a spot for it. So that's why, why I do want to make sure they have it, so that they still have a couple of weeks, and they're, as they said, they're getting down to the final development.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that they're gonna look at this as being deliverable within the time frame. I just think that they'll say, okay, yeah, we can do this. It is in scope, but it's too late in the process to deliver it. We'll just have to delay delivery another month or two. I mean, because they don't have any kind of a database model to support this stuff yet. They have to go all the way to the database. They have to build the APIs. So I'm skeptical that they'll be able to do it within the time, because they're still talking by the end of April. That's like 20 days,
Yeah.
18 days.
So, all right. So let's. I'm going to send something to Ajish right now, and he won't be able to get to it till overnight. But to give him just a heads up that there is some clarity now on our side as far as the way we're going to go through those first couple pages, and that on Wednesday we're expecting to give them the full rundown of how those first couple pages should run. So at least they know that,
Yeah, well, I mean, it's still,
sorry?
it's still gonna work. It's still gonna work the same way it does now,
Yeah.
where they get through like their personal info. But after hitting submit, instead of going back to the home page or whatever it does, it will give them a screen that says, great, thank you, blah, blah, blah. Now let's start building your sports profile.
Question, does it really have to be a screen, or can it just keep running? Like, instead of having a shot where it goes from one screen to the next, if it just goes down further on that page, because that we can auto-populate as much as we want further down, right?
It doesn't work on mobile.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want people scrolling too much.
No, you're right.
And you don't want them, and then you don't want them to go back and then update that personal info.
Right.
So I think you do want it to be like screen shifting.
Okay.
You know, what they see on the screen is going to change because they've just answered these questions.
Yeah. And we could have something on the side, like a placeholder. This is how far you are, or breadcrumbs or something.
Yeah, I mean, on the first page, after I give you my date of birth and zip code and name and stuff, and I hit next or submit or whatever, it's going to come to a screen that basically says, hey, thank you. You're now, you know, an active member. Start experiencing all of the benefits by creating your sports profile. Now, whatever words you use, that can all be wordsmith, but you're going to be able to try to sell them on the reason why they should be doing this.
Okay, let's say they do it
Get right
immediately.
away.
If they do it immediately, if it says, thank you for giving me your email, you click this button and it takes you to the email. That email then will have a click here button to take you back to the page. It can deliver you back to that same page, and that same page that you left says, thank you, you've registered your email, and now let's talk about your, the last couple questions, date of birth, zip code, and now let's talk about who you are and what sports you like. However, we're gonna write.
I don't follow what.
Oh, just say you're not
what you were
you're not forcing them to open another browser window or tab, because you're going back to the same tab you left off on when you were filling out the form.
Yeah, you're never opening another tab.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
You're never opening another tab unless you're going to an external site.
Cool.
Or you're opening like a PDF or something.
Right. Okay, that's important. All right, cool. All right, so my action, I guess my action is to figure out what those 11, how we're going to narrow that down. And but I think it's really the first one that's going to be the most important one. It's like player, enthusiast, parent, covers that, that single functionality. I'm looking for resources for my sport, and then everything else can be specific. Athletic director, athletic trainer, personal/class trainer, instructor, and then facilities manager, and then league administrator, and coach and recruiter. Right. So that's about 8 of them. All right, that's smooth. That's reasonable.
Okay, I'm gonna work on redoing those diagrams. Hopefully I can probably get them done for Wednesday morning, but we wouldn't have an opportunity to run them by the rest of our team. So if I do have them for what I'd hesitate to really provide them to them, but to display them for the developers so they get an idea of where we're going, which I did once before.
Yeah.
It'll be a little closer for them to see what we're kind of doing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We've narrowed it down now, and they might have a lot of input too on how they see it going. Because they're a bunch of it's an athletic country, so they have a lot of ideas into how to do it, and they've done sports sites before as well.
Yeah. So, and that's why I think when we discuss how we're asking the questions and answering it, I think we need to avoid saying we're going to have drop downs here and we're going to have radio buttons here. We should let them choose the right mechanism for selecting.
Okay.
That kind of thing, because they may be aware of newer or cooler ways for forms to be developed than what you or I might be used to.
Yeah. And that might get them more excited also, because there might be some new way to do it that is something they're they think is really awesome, but they haven't tried yet.
Yeah, and in mobile, it's a little bit different because you're restricted to the way, like when you fill out a form on the iPhone, it's different than if you fill out a form on an Android phone, which are both kind of proprietary in nature. Like they're not really subject to design elements. Like a drop down on the iPhone, Greg, like it's just that spinner wheel at the bottom. There's
Yeah.
no design to it, you know? So, you know, we have to look at different ways and how they do the designs for the forms, which are going to be significantly different between mobile and desktop.
Absolutely. Yeah. I sort of like the way that works on the mobile, though. It'd be cool if we can use that kind of a thing and adopt it for the site itself. You know, the spinner thing.
Well, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to make something spin using a mouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like on the iPhone, when you go to spin that spinner with your finger, you can, you know, drag your finger really fast to make it spin fast,
Right.
or you can kind of do it slow. You can't
Really
necessarily do that with a mouse on a laptop. So,
That's true.
you know, now if you have a touch screen on your laptop, but I don't know that we can determine from a web browser what kind of input display or device they have, if they have a touch screen or not. I don't know that we can even determine that.
Yeah, well, you know, they do that kind of stuff with Google Maps and you know, anything geographic. You have ways to move differently from a regular site page. So there might be a way,
Right.
but I don't know. It might just, you know, two fingers down and push up fast would spin it.
So,
But yeah, you're right. That's something that's you gotta leave to the developers to worry about.
yeah, well, not even the developers, it's the designers,
Yeah.
whoever
Be more specific.
does the UX
All right.
should really be specifying.
Okay, I have
All
an
right.
investor coming on.
Welcome back.
So
Welcome back, Bill.
yeah, good luck, Bill. And,
Thank you, guys.
talk to you later. Thanks, John. Great job today. I'm glad we're
Yeah.
really clarifying this. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
Right.
great job.
Okay, cool.
Talk to you later, guys.
Talk to you
Take
guys
care.
later.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.